Okay, Millie, thank you for joining me on Headstrong.
Thank you for having me back.
I know, so my first ever repeat guest, which I'm very honoured and privileged to have you on. And no better time given the success of Bad Drunk, which is available now, of course. But how exciting, the success is fantastic. And the feedback.
It feels amazing to actually get feedback from the readers. For so long I was like, is it any good? Is anyone going to read it? Is anyone going to like it? So yeah, it feels amazing that it's out.
At the end of 2024, I had the privilege of interviewing your husband, Hugo. His first interview actually in a fair few years. And we struck up kind of a conversation and a bit of a friendship. And it might well be an ADHD trait, but one of the things that I actually did edit a video, which I'll show you at the end. But we talked about you leaving the milk out of the fridge. Do you care to explain?
He has many annoying habits also, but yes, I do sometimes leave the milk out of the fridge, but it's because I'm planning to go back to it and I just can't be bothered to fit it back in the fridge and then get it out again. He literally goes around tidying up all of my mess, the girls' mess, the dog, and just constantly complaining about it.
I completely forgot to ask, how is having the dog? Because that's a new addition to the family.
Yeah. I feel bad for Hugo because he literally says he's right at the end of the pecking order now because I at night, the last one I'll give a kiss to is the dog, and he's waiting, and I'm just obsessed with her.
Unbelievable.
It's been amazing for my anxiety actually having a dog.
I couldn't agree more. I've got a dog as well. Hugo's met Hamilton actually, but it's that accountability of, I know you have kids and you have to get up for them in the morning. I do not, but I know that it's that commitment to guaranteed fresh air, have to walk the dog, and it's having that therapeutic emotional support.
I think it's the emotional support of my kids are getting older and being quite challenging sometimes and not always being nice to me, and the dog just always loves me.
Yeah.
Unconditional love.
It's so true. And something that I have found is I talk to my dog a lot because I work from home as well a lot, and it's amazing because he doesn't answer back, whereas I imagine your children are getting quite good at that.
Oh, they answer back all the time. And if I'm working from home and they're at school, I've got, she'll just come and sit on my knee, and I can be working, doing calls, emails, whatever, and she'll it's just having that constant presence.
I love it. When we first recorded our first episode in, I think, 2021, first of all, I've re-listened to it. I have improved as an interviewer, thank God. But more importantly, though, you had dabbled and explored sobriety, but now you have completed and achieved over 2.5 years of sobriety. How does it make you feel when you hear it out loud?
I feel really proud that I've stuck to it, and it's resulted in the book. I actually messaged my sober coach to let him know about the book, and it's important, I think, to take stock and actually have those moments where you're like, wow, that is a big achievement, because it's easy to kind of forget. Yeah,
totally. I think also with that journey of sobriety, which we're going to explore this whole podcast, it has led to so many opportunities and almost an opportunity for rediscovery of yourself and self-discovery.
Completely. I don't think I'd even begun my self-discovery until I stopped drinking.
Was it scary for you to almost rediscover who you are and almost face some of these demons?
Yeah. I had to discover that I actually didn't love myself at all and hadn't really since I was a child. So it's definitely been uncomfortable.
So in Bad Drunk, there is a particular moment where you talk about you're not ruling out alcohol ever again. You're taking it a day at a time. It's what is working for you right now. Why is it mentally helpful for you to frame sobriety as an active choice rather than an absolute decision?
Early on, I felt that it was easier to just be like, I'm going to do this for a year, see how I feel, take it day by day. And when I started writing the book, I did leave it kind of open, I can't promise anyone that I'll never drink again. But then every day, as I go through my sober journey, I just feel stronger and stronger about continuing. And the more I learn about the effect that alcohol has on the brain and body, it's like, why would I go back?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know that you talk about, missing that favorite drink or seeing other people do it. But when you have now gone on that journey, which is full of ups and downs in terms of going to parties or weddings and things like that, you have built a way of doing all these things now. What is something that surprised you on this journey?
I thought I was never going to have fun again. I thought I would never dance again. And actually I'm going to like a sober rave tonight.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You won't be in bed by 8:30 tonight.
I know it's going to be pushing it. Finishes at like 10. Very late.
Late one for
I know,
you.
on a Monday night.
So I absolutely love the book. It's so well written. It's a memoir of really raw emotion and experiences that you've had to rediscover and look back at and investigate again, which must have dug up a lot of emotions and memories for you that were really challenging. And what was that process like for you?
It did challenge my mental health a little bit, the process. And I've had lots of therapy every week, sometimes 2 sessions, to try to just work with whatever's coming up for me. But it's been very healing. It's made me really shine a light on a lot of darkness. And by bringing those dark memories out into the open and working on them, I've now been able to address things, process them, and now I could feel like I can let go.
Part of the journey involved talking with a sobriety coach who you've known for a long period of time now. What is a sobriety coach? Because they're not just somebody that deals with sobriety. It can be any form of sort of addiction or anything like that. But what is that process of sitting down with a sobriety coach, and what are those formulaic process and steps?
So the first step for me was he made me write down all the bad things I'd done when I was drunk, all of the worst, disastrous, bad drunk nights out, all of the really uncomfortable, ugly stuff that you don't want to ever think about again. I had to write it all out, and that was like homework, and it was really, really hard to do that. But he said it's so important because over time, often, your memories fade and you think it wasn't that bad. I like to drink, but, didn't have a problem. When you read it, you're like, this is why I'm not going to drink again. So if you get tempted, you've got this to go back and read to really help you to stay motivated. So that was like the first thing we did. And then it was going back to all the unresolved trauma that I didn't want to think about.
Yeah.
And
because ultimately with alcohol and that relationship, indeed in our culture, not just you, we use it as a suppressant to forget about things or help us cope, as a coping mechanism, as a crutch. And you certainly found that, didn't you?
Yeah, I was self-medicating for a long time, and I was in denial that I had a problem for a long time. I'd even seen the sober coach before I had kids, in the year before I got pregnant, and I was partying a lot, and I'd only stuck to it for a couple of months, and then I convinced myself I can drink now because I've been more moderate for a couple of months. I've fixed it. I've found a way to moderate my drinking, but it didn't last. And after I had kids, I really felt like I needed a drink, and I really deserved it because parenting was so hard.
I want to rewind to the moments just before you reached out to your sobriety coach for the first time. Can you tell us specifically about that time that was the catalyst to make you reach out, and what those emotions were that you were processing to make you reach out?
I was just really fed up of repeating the same cycles. I was fed up of the hangovers, the anxiety, the wasted weekends, and I was just so frustrated that I couldn't learn to moderate. I tried everything.
And it's amazing as well, given your diagnosis with ADHD, how I hate, given the similar experiences, I don't want to ever say, oh, because of that. Yeah. But it does help you put pieces together of the jigsaw, right?
It's the impulsivity with the ADHD. It's like if you had one, you're going to finish the bottle. It's the same with me with like we were talking about earlier with like chocolates or sweets. If I have one, the whole bag or the whole, whatever it is, family size box is gone because I've had that one taste and then that's it. I want all of it.
Yeah, I mean, how have you found diagnosis with ADHD, and what's that journey been like, given it was during your sobriety?
It's been amazing, really. It's really helpful for me to understand the way that I am and the way that's influenced decisions I've made in the past. And now I can look back and say, okay, that makes sense, and be less critical. It's helped with the kind of self-love, understanding why I found it so hard at school. And then when it came to the use of alcohol, it really explains a lot.
Oh, it's completely true. Given that sobriety in the early days you've got to take it one step at a time, right? It is not a long-term approach of, I'm going to be sober for the rest of my life.
I did day by day at the beginning, and then week by week.
How did you implement those strategies in your life then, in those early days of committing to sobriety?
I had a plan. So I didn't really feel tempted to drink at home. I wasn't sitting at home thinking, oh, I need to get alcohol. Well, I was more concerned I would be tempted to drink at a social occasion because that's where I was going to feel uncomfortable. So it was making a plan for the social occasions that I had to go to. What am I going to say if someone offers me a drink? What am I going to drink instead of alcohol? What time can I leave? And I always had a plan, and it was like a get out plan. So it was like, okay, do I really have to go? If I didn't have to go, I just didn't go. And that felt like the kindest thing. And then if I had to go, I made a plan of the people that I really had to say hello to, how long it was kind of acceptable to stay, and I would just leave after that, maybe after an hour, get there early, leave early, don't go hungry, message a friend who'll hold you accountable, or like my sober coach, depends. But having someone there also, if you've got a friend or your partner that knows it might be difficult for you, you just want them to kind of stick by your side, you know, do what feels right for you, but have support for sure and make a plan.
I was at an engagement party middle of January, which is not an ideal time for an engagement party regardless, but having committed to doing dry January, I wish I had known your kind of structure and mentality of approaching that event, because I went there like, right, I'm not going to drink, let's just do that, focus on not doing that. But you don't realize that when someone offers you a drink, what do I do? What do I say? What should I be drinking? I don't want them to ask me why I'm sober. So what can I do to caveat that? It's really important to have these things in place and have a plan. How's that evolved now? Do you still have that, or is it now intuitive?
It's intuitive now. I was at a kids' party at the weekend and someone tried to hand me a glass of champagne. I'm just like, no, thank you, and I went and got like a sparkling water. But it's amazing how often you are offered a drink, often at occasions where you wouldn't even think there's going to be one at 11:30 in the morning and surrounded by kids. But I'm just it's like autopilot for me now to go to not choosing alcohol. But at the beginning, I definitely had a plan and would often take my own alcohol-free drinks with me.
Do you find the people there that are sober?
I always find the sober person.
Well, in fact, from what you've said and I've heard, they also find you.
Yeah, they do. And then I'll find someone that I know I can speak to easily. It's actually normally someone else that's got ADHD, because I hate small talk. And if you're talking to someone else that's not neurodivergent, you could normally go straight in with a deep chat.
God, yeah. It's so amazing. I know, literally. I mean, do you find talking to other people helps you as well in your journey?
Yes.
Like strangers or I know that there's this incredible community that you've built of people who have read the book and engage about sobriety with you. But do you find that really helps you when they talk about themselves and how much you've inspired them?
It really helps me, and knowing there's so many other people that have had the same struggles as me and that really relate to my story makes me feel better about it, and again helps me to be kinder to my younger self. And it feels really good to hear from people and get people find this topic so difficult to talk about.
Why do you think that is?
I think there aren't enough role models for people that are in the sober space, because it feels still really shameful and taboo to talk about a drinking problem.
I want to touch on a couple of the things that you do now that you thought you wouldn't be able to do without drinking, such as the joy you find in movement, like dancing, for example, tonight, because Hugo says you're a fan of a boogie. And you do this at home now, and you put on your favourite song, and you have a dance. I mean, what an amazing thing. Like, what a good coping mechanism. And it's a nod to say, you don't, that's not something that's gone. You can do that.
Yeah, if anxiety comes up for me now, one of the best ways for me to move it through my body is just go into a room on my own, shut the door, and put on some music and just let my body move however it wants to move through the music, like a moving meditation. Or I also quite like shaking. Have you ever done that style of it? You literally just stand and like jiggle your whole body, and it just completely disperses the energy.
I love that.
calms the nervous system.
Are there any songs that really help you?
Oh, well, I run about, I'd say run, it's more like a jog, gentle jog twice a week. And I listen to 90s hip hop, and it is just such a joyful experience for me. I love it. I'm like singing along, and it just, it makes me feel really good. That's also another good one I heard. If you're in that moment of discomfort, a panic attack comes, or you're just having intrusive thoughts and you can't get out of your head, is to like listen to your favorite music, and then something you know all the words to.
Exercise has been a huge part of your life. In fact, 3 women's health covers.
I think it's actually 4.
That was Hugo told me that. So actually, you can blame him. He doesn't know you well enough. No, but did exercise take on a deeper significance after embracing sobriety?
Yes, because I wasn't hungover and constantly cancelling workouts, messaging my trainer at 4 a.m. saying, sorry, I've just got a stomach bug, I'm not going to make it in. And they obviously like, you're hungover, I could see pictures of you out last night. And since being alcohol free, I'm really focused on what makes me feel good and health. And exercise is like number one for me as a pillar, for mental health, but just overall health as well. And I went and did weights this morning, do Pilates, I run, sometimes I do yoga, depends what I feel like I need.
It's that non-negotiable to really keep you,
It's
it's such an important thing. I mean, the release of dopamine and just makes you feel better. And it's finding that alternative, particularly with an ADHD impulsive brain, you almost, and I don't want to say it quite like this, but it's how I'm thinking, like you want to find that new addiction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't want to say a healthy addiction. It's like just finding something to focus your energy into. And exercise is very helpful for me. It's like a meditation almost sometimes.
One of the things you talk about is finding new hobbies to keep the mind stimulated. How did you discover these new passions helping you along the way?
Well, one thing that I did quite early on in my sobriety that really surprised me, because I've always been so scared of heights, was to do a Go Ape challenge, which is like a high wire challenge where you're in a harness, but you're going, through this assault course, like at treetop height, and doing stuff outside that's kind of, you're getting fresh air, but you're doing something, where you're getting that dopamine and you're getting that thrill out of it. That was something I never thought that I'd be into.
That's cool.
Well, I thought I was going to get really into rock climbing. Haven't done that one yet. It's on my list. I love doing stuff with my kids. It's just like colouring, like crafting, puzzles. Puzzles are a good one for the mind. Cooking was a big one for me.
Cooking is such a great way to switch off and just detach, because you have such a busy life. There are so many different things going on, particularly then also add on children. You actually need to find something to give time to yourself and look after yourself. And I know that you also have incorporated breath work and meditation, the dance meditation as well. How have all these practices supported your mental health?
Meditation is one for me that's really important to really try and keep up. Over the weekend, I actually didn't manage to do it, but then I went for a run, and then I went to a Pilates class. So those kind of counted as my meditations, because they were things that took me out of my head. During the week, particularly on the weekend, often I get up early with the kids and Hugo lies in, so I don't get to do my morning meditation, but normally I wake up really early so I can do it before the kids wake up. And it just sets me up for the day. I feel calmer definitely during the day if I've done it. I do a 20-minute one.
That's really impressive. Do you feel like you have a blueprint now for your own mental health that is non-negotiable, and if you don't do these things, you are not quite framed right for the day? Or
yes.
do you look forward to them, but do you feel like days are not as good if you don't do them?
It's also linked to sleep as well, and sometimes the kids wake up or you just have a random bad night of sleep. So it's sometimes feels a bit out of control, but the normal things that set me up are a meditation, exercise, good breakfast, and you're kind of good to go.
What does the word community mean to you?
The word community makes me feel grateful, because I feel so lucky to have the platform that I have and to have built such an amazing community and have the chance to engage with so many other people that go on their own sobriety journeys, and I feel like the book was an extension of that and something I really wanted to give back to my online community, because I get so many messages, often from mums, women and mums the most, say, or not just my age, like quite a big age range, saying that they resonate with my story and asking for tips and advice on how to keep going and how to stay committed to staying off the booze. So yeah, it feels good to have the book out.
How important is that sober community and indeed sober friends who help you stay accountable in your own journey? Because it's all well and good you giving advice to these people, usually directing them to the book. You should go read the book. But how important is that for you on your own journey to actually feel grounded and stay accountable for your own sobriety?
I think everyone should have, if they're on this journey, should have like a sober buddy to hold them accountable, make some new sober friends or sober curious friends. I was very lucky to connect with another mum over Instagram about 18 months ago, and she's become one of my best friends, and she's been sober about 6 months longer than me. We celebrate all our sober milestones together and constantly WhatsApping. We see each other. We both live in London, so we see each other quite often as well. And she just completely understands how I feel. And it's very validating having those conversations.
There are always these people, as we touched on, at these sort of parties and events, there's that one person who goes, oh, go on, one drink won't hurt.
Yeah.
That person, how do you deal with that? And not just you, but just in general, what's good tips and advice you can say to these people? Because that person is actually the one that also needs to self-reflect, but it's not your job to encourage that. So how do you tackle that?
I'm going to pull out like a Mel Robbins quote. She has a new book and it's called Let Them. So there's always going to be these people. So I just say, let them, you're holding up a mirror to them. So it's like, let them feel how they're going to feel about you not drinking. And then you just need to check in with yourself. And I'd say having an answer that you've kind of got prepared for someone like that is really helpful. Because I've definitely come up against it quite a lot of times. They're like, oh, you're not still doing that sober thing, are you? Come on, just have one, it won't count. And it's very easy to get riled up. And I do have quite a feisty side. So like, just breathe and smile and like, no, I'm good, thanks. Like, and just staying strong. If I've ever felt tempted to have a drink, I think about how I'm going to feel the next morning. Like how I would feel if I woke up and I'd had a drink, which would probably have been 10 drinks because it was very hard for me to have one drink. And how I'm going to feel if I wake up knowing I said no, and I remember going to sleep, I've slept well, and I know I'll wake up and be really grateful that I didn't drink.
Alcohol is such a huge part of British culture. I actually speak to a lot of friends and they almost say that one of their hobbies is let's go to the pub. And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with that. But drinking is indoctrinated into British culture, particularly, from an early age, as you found out. How have your friendships evolved through your sobriety journey and indeed maybe even got smaller?
I would say my social circles definitely got smaller. I think COVID as well really affected things. And I think people are either in your life for seasons or reasons.
Love that.
Which is a really helpful thing to remember. It's okay to drift apart from people and sometimes you drift apart and then come back together. Sometimes you drift apart and it makes space for you to make new friends. I definitely felt like I had a lot of friends back in the day when I was drinking, but they weren't close friends that I would sit sober and sit with sober and have a cup of tea and talk about my feelings. They were friends that were there for the good times and the parties and the nights out, but they weren't there to pick up the pieces the next day when I was falling apart. My really close friends have stayed in my life because I would enjoy seeing them without alcohol most of the time, but any friends that were based on just going out and partying aren't people that I see anymore.
Did you experience moments when you realised some friendships weren't, authentic and as supportive as you thought? Was there a kind of a moment where you're like, God, they only ever invite me out when they want to have me at that, extended version of party self? Did you kind of have a self-realization moment of, yeah, that they're actually not good for me?
Yes. It's amazing when your eyes are really open to things and you start to be like, oh my God. And you start to really see things much more clearly, and also become aware of how being around different people affects your energy. Like, I'm a sponge for energy, so I'm quite empathic. So if I'm around someone and their energy is really heavy and negative, and you feel really drained after seeing them, suddenly I was like, I don't need that. And I'm really protective of my energy. I get burnt out easily. I faced burnout last year, so I've been much more protective of my energy since then.
How do you tackle burnout?
You just have to, try to not get to that point, because once you reach burnout, then I think you really need to take a break and hit pause. And for me, I took some time off and took a couple of weeks to feel better. But it's about recognizing the signs that I might be heading towards burnout, and then actually hitting pause and reevaluating everything that's on my plate at that point.
What advice do you give to somebody who is not as confident as they once were? Let's say they're on that journey of sobriety and they are in those early stages, but you do get less confident, but you are now, as you say, the most authentic and confident sense of Millie, and self. So what advice would you give to somebody who is not feeling confident?
I would say start on your self-love healing journey, because when you really look at the reasons that you maybe don't love yourself and you work on those things and you start to truly love and accept yourself, I think confidence really comes from within. And you need to learn to be your own hype man. You need to learn to, to really big yourself up. Another Mel Robbins tool that helped me was like high-fiving myself in the mirror and really like talking to myself in the mirror and being like, you've got this. And a lot of the work I've done has been like reparenting and inner child work. So lots of talking back to the thoughts in my head as well, actually, and being like, I don't have to believe every thought I'm having.
I love it. I talk to myself a lot. I think it's actually a really good trait, because I was talking to a guest before, and it's so easy to think it, but when you say it out loud, it's a good release as well. I think that's so important.
I always say to Hugo all the crazy things I've thought, and it makes it so much easier. He's like, okay, what's going on for you, Annie? And I'm like, well, I had this thought, and like, and then when you say it, you're like, wow, that's like obviously so untrue.
Yeah.
Or like, that's just not the reality of the situation. I think journaling can be really helpful for that as well, just getting the thoughts out of your head.
It's okay to be vulnerable, and people don't talk about vulnerability enough, to the point that someone like Dr. Alex as well talks about taking medication for your mental health. You're allowed to talk about that. There should not be a stigma. And you've taken medication for that and been vocal about it.
Yeah, I still do take medication.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think there still is that stigma around that, when actually over the last 10 years, 15 years, mental health conversations have improved, but people still are easy and quick to judge?
I think people have a certain set idea of what that maybe looks like. And it's the same, I think, with alcohol issues. And it's just this old way of thinking. But it's been very healing for me, accepting that medication is a useful tool for me. And at the moment, it's part of one of the many different things that I do that are all for my overall wellness. But I felt the shame when I first went onto medication big time.
I mean, I totally understand that. And it must have evolved also, again, like now it's part of your daily routine and your life, and you don't even think about it. Exactly. But let's rewind then to 21. Millie has nearly been drinking for 8 years, which is crazy to think about, because we start so young in this country, which is ridiculous to say.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother podcast, talking about underage drinking and that problem. But no one knew the success of what Made in Chelsea was going to bring. And at that age, how were you approaching like life genuinely? Because your relationship with alcohol then was nearly every day, or every weekend there was a party, and that was the norm. Where were you mentally though at that stage? Because even at 21, you'd gone through a whole host of experiences that you've had to revisit through this journey of sobriety. So where were you mentally at that age?
I was pretty fragile. I was self-medicating with alcohol most nights of the week. But I didn't think that was unusual. I didn't think I had a problem. But my anxiety was starting to rear its head, and I didn't really understand enough about my mental health to really label it. But around that age, I was having a lot of anxiety and panic attacks.
At that age, teenage years into those 20s, there is this sense of fearlessness, just generally speaking, and alcohol fuels that fearlessness. And you've talked about being the party girl, people, you were the life and soul of the party. And then you were catapulted also into the spotlight. Did your relationship with alcohol increase because of that?
Yes. I remember watching the episodes when they aired and being so filled with anxiety to see the episode that I would, be downing alcohol whilst watching it, and then sitting looking at all the tweets and just feeling the anxiety bubbling up, and then just, numbing with. I look back even at footage, if there's a clip of it online, and I just think I look quite lost.
What would you have liked back then?
To have read this book.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shane's going to plug the book. I wish I'd read my book.
No, I get it, because it's such a great blueprint for help, genuinely. I don't think people genuinely at the time realised that what you were going through was real, because it's framed and said this is a reality show. They put you in situations and say, oh, you should talk to X, you should talk to Y, but it's not scripted. These are real emotions. And you were in a predicament where you needed to get out of there completely. Tell me about that, and those emotions and how alcohol affected those situations.
I mean, there were situations definitely on set where I was feeling really anxious about the scene I was about to film, because maybe I'd fallen out with somebody and I knew I was going to be talking to them, and I would just drink to have the courage to say what I was scared to say with a camera there. It's hard to have, some people don't find it that difficult, but I've always found confrontation really difficult. So I'd just be a kind of literally shaking mess, but just be constantly drinking to try and just bring myself back to, feeling calm again. And then that's obviously just feeding into the anxiety more.
What was the infrastructural care like at the time on Made in Chelsea? Be that from producers, other cast members?
So it was like, okay, maybe Millie, don't have another drink, because we don't want you to be so drunk on camera that we can't understand what you're saying. But it was also, Millie, no, you can't leave set. Here's a bottle of champagne and here's what you should say. I remember one scene where I was really emotionally not okay. And instead of it being like, of course you can leave, it was like I was told, and then of course I could have left, but I was made to feel that I couldn't leave. And then given quite a lot of alcohol to give me the courage to then go and film another scene and confront two people. And that was really produced by the team.
Really heavily manipulated, right? How do you think, if Made in Chelsea, I know it obviously still exists now and it's in a different way, if it was started again now and you were back in those original emotion situations, how do you think it should have been dealt with differently by, let's say, those producers?
I think just the aftercare, like the checking in, checking in. I wasn't having regular therapy at that point. I think I definitely should have been. Probably needed a therapist on set. I think just, feeling like you can say no, and you're not going to be like manipulated and pushed into doing something that you don't want to. The point when I left the show was when I filmed a scene and they let the other person film their response when I wasn't there. And at that point I just said, this is so not real anymore, and I'm not going to be part of this. And that's when I decided to leave.
Was that liberating?
Yeah, it was. I was very emotionally fragile at the point when I left the show, and I really felt like I'd had enough. I felt like I wanted to run away from the show, but also from the kind of lifestyle and the people, and I kind of did run away.
Do you reflect on it positively?
I do reflect on it positively. I do feel proud of the show to have been part of it. It's still going amazingly. I was walking along King's Road taking my daughter to nursery last week, and I walked past people filming at Bluebird.
Stop it.
And it was some of the producers with the same team as when I was on the show.
No way.
And it's been like nearly 15 years. And it was such a deja vu moment. And they were there, I won't say who it was, but they were there filming, like drinking champagne. And I just was like taking my daughter to nursery.
How times change.
And I was like, this is just so weird. I'm so glad I'm not on the show anymore.
Hey guys! That's so funny. Now, one part of that therapeutic journey has been documenting it on social media. How have you found presenting that new authentic self on social media? Because you've shown a different side of vulnerability and Millie, which is completely different to what you would have posted when Instagram came out 10 years ago.
Hugo always laughs because he's like, you really have an interesting way of doing your healing. You feel like you can't talk to your parents about stuff, but you can put it in a book and you can put it on social media, or you can say it in a podcast and then put it out into the world. Then you then have to deal with things that you've said. So it's maybe not a traditional route to healing, but I really feel like I've grown a lot as a person and been able to grow more into my authentic self through sharing my vulnerability and not feeling like I'm masking or hiding. Like people are like, oh, you're jumping on the ADHD bandwagon. It's like, no, I'm not. I've actually been told I've had it for a long time, but my therapist, I only recently
Sort the diagnosis.
thought the diagnosis because I thought it was so interesting related to alcohol. I was doing the books. I was like, okay, I'm going to find out if I actually have it. And sharing about anxiety. I mean, I started sharing more openly when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I started sharing about the anxiety I was feeling about the pregnancy. Then I started sharing around pregnancy and then my postpartum journey, and then more about my mental health, and then slowly into my sober journey. And I think I've got more confident sharing as I've gone along.
Do you think if you had been diagnosed with ADHD when Made in Chelsea was on, it would have changed your relationship with alcohol or that journey? Or do you think not at all?
It was just so not on my wavelength at that point. I just wasn't in a place I don't think I would have even found it helpful at that point because I wasn't in a place where I wanted to do the work.
I get that. I mean, you really have to be in a frame of mind where you have to be accountable and do it and commit to it, right? Because it's so difficult to go on that journey. It's not like you just make the decision, go cold turkey, and it just happens. You have to work hard to do it and maintain it.
You have to wake up every day and decide. It's a choice. It doesn't feel like that now, though. Now it just feels like this is my life, and part of my life is not drinking. If I'm around alcohol, I'm not tempted to drink. I know it's not for me.
What is your relationship with crying and that out release of emotion?
I love crying, but I cry a lot less now. I used to cry like every day, but that's also because I had high functioning depression and was in denial about it. But I think it's such a good release, and I always feel so much better when I have cried. The times I am likely to cry now are maybe in therapy if I'm having a breakthrough, or if I have a really emotional moment with my kids and have, that might just be like one little tear, like they're doing something really adorable and it just really moves me, and that I don't want them to see that I'm crying.
Do you remember the last time you cried?
The last time I cried, I think it was in a therapy session. Yeah. But I used to cry. I used to do spinning, and I used to cry when I was in my spin class. And I think it was like the movement was somehow making me release.
Fair. I've not heard this before, but fair enough.
I don't know. So I used to just be like sobbing over my bike, but it was dark, so no one could see. But because I'm on the meds I'm on for my anxiety, make it, I think, harder for me to access some feelings. So crying is just not.
Well, because those medications, they try to balance out the lows, right? And I totally understand the chemical imbalance, but I know that you were on some medication before that maybe didn't suit you, and it is trial and error potentially as well. Do you find that relationship with that medication strongly outweigh, it outweighs those benefits, outweigh the negatives, because you and I probably are quite similar in the sense that you have such peaks and such troughs of emotion before you're on that medication, right? And it really does keep you on a bit more of a middle ground, right?
I can still feel anxiety, but it's more manageable, and it's at a point where I'm able to recognize it and then do what I need to do to minimize it, or to, I can actually I'm in a place where I can sit and do the things that will then help me to be relieved of that anxiety. Whereas before it was so intense that I couldn't sit and do breath work. I couldn't, it just was completely taking over, and I would go from 0 to 100. So often out of the blue and be having panic attacks. It was every couple of days. I just couldn't live like that. But having been on the medication now for a year, I am looking to potentially slowly start to come off it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've been able to do the work in therapy over the last year, and I've really developed like strong practices and things, coping mechanisms. I think I'd like to see how I am without it, but I'm not going to rush it. It's been a year. I'm feeling really good, and I never take that for granted. Like having been in a place where I've felt constantly in fear.
With support networks and being able to express vulnerability, you've really grown and been able to do that through, as you say, working on yourself, going to therapy at points twice a week, and seeing a sobriety coach. Yeah, it's a commitment. But when you were younger and you went through a lot of traumatic experiences from a young age, what opportunities were presented to you, if any, to be able to even speak out at that age? Because I know from when I was at school, mental health was not talked about. Mm-hmm. It was brushed over and neglected. And I know that you had an incredibly supportive kind of upbringing, and your parents were very supportive of you, but you found it incredibly difficult to approach that sort of conversation with them.
Yeah, I found it really hard to talk to them about alcohol, sex, just anything that felt taboo. And I didn't really have a boarding school, like a adult figure that I also felt I could talk to.
A role model.
I didn't have a role model that I could talk to. I was forced actually to have therapy at school because I was not doing great, and they could see that. And I had depression, and I got diagnosed, but I refused to really partake in the therapy sessions. I remember sitting there angry.
You were there, right?
Angry I was there, and just not, I didn't want to open up. They didn't manage to get anywhere near me. I just sat there and was like, I'm just here because it means I don't have to be in a lesson, and took it pretty much, as like just an excuse to get out of class.
From that time of school, have you ever had people reach out who bullied you and try and apologize to you, or try and reconnect with you given your success as well? Have you had to experience that?
Yeah, it's interesting.
How have you approached that, if you want to talk about it?
I mean, having someone kind of reach out and say, like, oh, it's amazing how well you're doing, so, kind of like connect, like they're your friend. Like, wow, just forgotten everything. But I've just chosen to not reply, it's just fake to me. It's not worth it, but it's interesting.
It's always interesting.
I've never felt like I want to track down the people that bullied me and speak to them. It's just, I know maybe some people would do that to get some kind of closure, but it's interesting to see how people react over the years. I did have one girl say to me that it really bit her on the ass that I was doing suddenly so well.
Interesting.
That was, I kind of like laughed at that one and just was like, well, but I don't wish anything bad to anyone. I when I look back at the people that bullied me when I was younger, I just think they must have been having a really hard time at home with other emotional issues, and probably being bullied by someone else in their family, or they would have had
their own
trauma and demons. And I can look back with a lot more compassion now, and I don't hold any anger.
When you have gone through this journey, you must have now think, what can I implement as a parent yourself? Because you care so much, obviously, about your kids and are so present and spend so much time with them. But I know you would never want them to be in a position where they don't feel comfortable talking to you. Mm-hmm. So how have you made that kind of, I know they're still very young, but how do you create that dynamic and plan to create that dynamic with your children? Because thinking about that opportunity for talking and connecting is so important.
And they're starting to ask questions. So Sienna asked me at the weekend where babies come from. I was like, okay, I need a little bit of time to answer that one. I was like, maybe I'll tell you when you're a little bit older. But I said, I thought I might find a book that's age appropriate, because that was often quite a good way to explain things to them. But in terms of having really open dialogue, I think it just starts from them being really young. So at the moment, what I keep reiterating with them is that never to have secrets from mummy and daddy. And that even if they've done something bad, like they keep, like one of them like tried to flush like a whole loo roll down the loo the other day, like the other managed to make a hole in the wall in our TV room. I don't know how, but being like, you just tell me the truth. And I won't be cross. We can talk about it. There might be not a punishment, but we might have to talk about why it happened, and there might be repercussions, like your iPad's gone for the week or something. But knowing that they're not going to get told off for telling me something that's difficult is really important. And I talk to them a lot about body safety as well.
I love that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, do you think your approach to parenting and indeed just being a mother would be different if you were still drinking?
Yes. I think it's really allowed me to be more connected with myself, and then being able to really look at how I parent, what my kind of go-to is, and then, okay, where I can improve, and trying to pause before I get angry and just think about emotionally what they're going through in that moment really helps. It's really hard parenting.
Yeah.
Never going to be, no one's the perfect parent, but I think I'm able to be a more conscious parent.
That I like that. Yes, self-present.
Yeah.
So much more present. It's so reflective as well and clear to see. But it's so important as well to have and I know that not everyone has this luxury, but a supportive partner. Be that with the kids as a father, but of you on your own journey. Because I know that you and Hugo have had conversations that have been really difficult.
Yeah.
And there may have been times where it was, right, alcohol is really now affecting things. It's black or white now.
Yeah.
If you want to keep me and make a future, you need to quit drinking. What was that like, hearing that?
It was hard. It was very uncomfortable for me at that point, because the idea of completely stopping drinking, never drinking again, felt so scary. But he'd said it to me quite a few times. I had to reach the decision on my own. So we had a pretty big argument about my drinking about 5 days before I actually stopped for good. And then I ended up having a massive panic attack, and it was after that panic attack. And I've just finally said, enough is enough now. And I haven't drunk since.
I love it. How important is having the pillar that is Hugo?
I mean,
for support
I'm very lucky to have Hugo, and I'm grateful that he put up with all my bad drunk behaviour, but I really had to be accountable. And when I stopped drinking, it didn't just solve all our issues. I had to then take a look at all the things I'd said and done, and the issues I'd caused in our relationship. And we went to therapy and started to we started to share more openly what was really going on for us. And we had a kind of big breakthrough moment when we realized we just were not good at really sharing things with each other. And now I feel like we've built a much deeper connection that wasn't really there when we were younger. We've known each other for so long. You change as people, you grow and evolve. And we've both gone and done our own healing so that then we can come together and be better partners.
Communication is the core of any relationship, isn't it? It's crazy. How has that improved through your journey?
So we would do these like communication sessions where we would sit and do like set the scene, like light some candles, burn some sage, like get all zen, play some nice music in the background, and then we'd both just sit and just hold each other, like hug. Sometimes we'd do some breath work together and just both just get in a place where we felt really ready to share. And then we'd just go, like, let the one person speak, and just the other just listens and can't speak. And we just completely like hold the space for each other to say what we needed to say, and then like take a deep breath before deciding to respond. And there's like rules, like you can't like raise your voice, you know, you've got to really try to understand how the other's like feeling. And we worked with an intimacy coach, actually.
Did you really? Mm-hmm. What piece of advice would you give to somebody who's reluctant to speak out about their mental health and well-being?
I would say, as hard as it feels, like the hardest step is often admitting to yourself that you're facing an issue. And once you've taken that first step, it actually feels like a big relief when you speak to someone.
My final question, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong means to me choosing to put yourself first and your mental health first, and choosing to say no to the things that are no longer serving you.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Bad
you.
Drunk is available now. Go check it out if you want an honest, raw memoir and help on your journey with sobriety. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm not just saying that because Millie's here. It truly is a really well-written book. So go check it out.